In this lesson, we'll cover a critical aspect of UI design, often ignored by beginners, and sometimes, unfortunately, even by experienced designers, and that's accessibility. As designers, it's our responsibility to create interfaces that are not only visually stunning and functional, but also inclusive and accessible to all users. For users, these disabilities may be permanent, temporary, or situational. For example, you could be colorblind, or you could be wearing sunglasses and using a smartphone under a harsh sunlight. If we think about inclusive design, we need to think about the following: visual impairments, like color blindness or low vision; auditory ones, like auditory processing disorder or a noisy background; speech ones, like stuttering or having a sore throat; motorical impairments, like a broken arm; and finally cognitive ones, like attention deficit or dyslexia, seizure, and vestibular disorders. Inclusive design serves to enable everyone to interact with products and services. A common argument against it is that products are worsened for people without disabilities. But in my humble opinion, improving a product's accessibility often benefits both the users with and without disabilities. By designing with accessibility in mind, such as using accessible colors, product designers create more inclusive products that provide a better user experience for everyone. Accessibility also helps ensure their fundamental right to access information and services. We can also look at designing for accessibility from a legal standpoint. Many countries have laws and regulations that require products and services to be accessible to all users, and failure to comply can result in legal action or hefty fines. By designing with accessibility in mind, product designers can avoid legal issues and, most importantly, create products that are accessible and inclusive for all users. As we're all aware by now, color is a powerful tool in UI design. Colors can be a vital tool when designing with accessibility in mind. By using colors that are easily distinguishable and provide sufficient contrast, designers can create products usable by people with different color vision deficiencies, including color blindness. However, it's important to remember that not all users perceive the color in the same way. Users with color vision deficiencies, for example, may have difficulty distinguishing between certain colors. For example, it's estimated that 8% of men and 0.5% of women worldwide have some form of color blindness. To make our interfaces more accessible, we need to consider color usage carefully. Here are some tips to keep in mind. Use high contrast. High contrast color schemes can make the text and other UI elements easier to read and distinguish from the background. Consider using a contrast checker to ensure that your interface meets the accessibility standards. The contrast ratio should be at least 4.5 for normal text and 3 for larger text. Avoid relying on color alone. Don't use color as the sole means of conveying information or functionality. For example, if you're using color to indicate an error, also include a descriptive error message that users with color vision deficiencies can understand. A trick you can use to force yourself to use signifiers other than color is to always start designing in grayscale. Another tip is choosing colors carefully. When selecting colors, consider how they will appear to users with color vision deficiencies. Use opacities and natural lightness or darkness of a color shade to signify differences too. When working with data visualizations, your main goal is to make lines and fills distinguishable. To start, choose colors with high contrast for people with red-green color blindness. But color should not be the only difference. For graphs, you can use patterns in addition to color fills. This makes your graphs distinguishable even when converted to grayscale. For line charts, you can use line styles like dotted and dashed and solid to further differentiate them. Some colors can be difficult to distinguish from each other, particularly shades of green and red. Red-green color blindness is by far the most common group of color blindnesses. For people with this condition, it's hard to differentiate between reds and greens. Avoid using color combinations that could be confusing or difficult to differentiate. If possible, avoid any bright and vibrant hues. However, if that's not possible, make sure that you're not using vibrant hues together. Another way to improve colors is to shift reds towards blue and greens towards yellow. It makes them more distinguishable for people with red-green color blindness. Monochromacy occurs in about 1 in 30,000 people. It's the complete inability to see color. Everything's in shades of gray. Next tip is testing your interface. Don't assume that your interface is accessible just because it meets certain guidelines or standards. Test it with users with color vision deficiencies to see how they perceive it. This can help you identify any issues and make necessary adjustments. The necessary contrast depends on the content, text versus icon, and the size. Bigger text needs less contrast. To make sure your designs are accessible, there are numerous guidelines to keep in mind. It's easy to achieve them with dark text on a light background situation. However, with color it gets a little bit more complicated. White text on our primary colors rarely works, and making those colors darker easily makes the UI ugly or attention-grabbing. To fix this problem, flip the contrast. Use a dark color text on a light color background. On darker color backgrounds, you can use our knowledge of some colors being brighter and make or rotate the hue of the text to one of the brighter options like cyan, magenta, and yellow. Designing with accessibility in mind is challenging, but luckily for us, many tools can do the heavy lifting for us and improve our endeavors to improve the accessibility level of our designs. Web Aim Color, Contrast Checker, Adobe Color, Stark plugin for Figma, all are lifesavers when it comes to helping us design accessible interfaces. One common problem I've seen with accessibility checkers is that they aren't as good for white text on an orange or lighter blue backgrounds. Black text performs better, even though it's visibly worse. Instead of WCAG as a standard, I suggest using the APCA contrast checker on those. To me, it seems to give more reliable results. It's not a standard yet, but I found it very helpful and reliable. Disabled elements are the last topic I'd love to go over. They often have reduced contrast with the background. This is not ideal as it makes them hard to see for some people. Avoid doing that or using them whenever possible. On the other hand, they are inactive and disabled for a reason, and only once they become enabled are they interactive and need to be seen. So it's a bit of a gray area. Use your best judgment when working with disabled UI elements. There are definitely projects where I've reached only a AA score for disabled elements, as they didn't negatively impact anyone's experience, and it was clear how and when those actions would be enabled for the user. If you have to use disabled UI elements, you can add a not allowed cursor or use a strike-through style for the text to further extend that message. Some elements that might not need to achieve the contrast thresholds are images or inactive UI components or purely decorative UI elements. To sum up, accessibility is a crucial aspect of UI design, and color plays a significant role in creating inclusive and accessible interfaces. By using high contrast, avoiding relying on color alone, choosing colors carefully, and testing our interfaces, we can ensure that our designs are accessible to all users.